You'll accomplish less in 1 year than you hoped, and way more in 3 years than you could have imagined. And I think we're at the cusp of that in Denver Institute of 3 years into the FOR campaign.
You're listening to the Faith and Work podcast, where we explore ways to serve God and others in our daily work to bring life and hope to workplaces and cities.
Welcome to the Faith and Work podcast. I'm Ross Chapman, serving as your host today, and I also serve as the CEO at Denver Institute for Faith and Work. Today's episode is a little bit different. Rather than talking with voices from the workplace outside of the Denver Institute workplace, we're going to be highlighting some employees who work here at Denver Institute. We're going to be pulling back the curtain and letting them share a little bit of insight into what's been going on in our organization, specifically as it relates to the first 2 years of the FOR campaign. As you may know, or if you aren't aware, the FOR campaign, which is FOR campaign, it's really our 5-year strategic plan to address society's poor and less than compelling view of work, because we think that Christians and Scripture have a very compelling view of work. And so we want to invite some employees on to kind of help us understand what has that actually looked like at Denver Institute. Where are we excited? What has been challenging? What are we looking forward to? And so let me just set up the FOR campaign a little bit for you. We launched it in the fall of 2023 and began working on it in 2024. And really, it's about this view that society has about work. We think it is less than it should be. We think it should be actually our vision, which is that every person's work brings hope and life to their city or to their place, their workplace. We think it's really essential to the future of work, the future of workers, the future of the church, and the future of cities for us to recover a vision for work that aligns with the biblical vision, with God's vision for work. And we took that core problem that society lacks a compelling vision and purpose for work, and we broke it into 5 key problems. And let me just share with you what those 5 key problems are very briefly, and then we'll dive into this conversation with some Denver Institute employees. And the first one is that society lacks this compelling vision for work, but Christians will perpetuate that same vision without access to excellent vocational discipleship resources. The second one is that it's difficult to imagine what it actually looks like once you gain God's vision for work and you start to see it more clearly. What does it actually mean on Monday morning? What does it mean when you actually show up and you take on the responsibilities and tasks and the relationships of your workplace? How do you apply it actually? And one of the ways we've been doing that is through the Voices from the Workplace series here on the podcast. And then the third problem that we're trying to address is that isolation and loneliness seems to be increasing in society. And that's true also in the workplace. And compounding that problem is that the workplace is being asked more and more to actually meet that need, that sense of loneliness, that we're asking work to do that more and more. And so we think it's a great opportunity for Christians to recognize, hey, we could be people who actually know our coworkers well. We care about them. We show them love. We think this is a big problem that Christians can address. And then the fourth problem is that same gap that exists for individuals who finally see God's vision for work, but wonder how does it actually show up in my work, that applies to organizations. So really focusing in on institutions, organizations, and churches. What does it look like for them to bring God's vision for work into the life of their organization, whether they're specifically led by a Christian vision or not? And maybe you just work in one that doesn't have that, but you can affect the culture and the policies in a certain way. And then lastly, we think there is rare collaboration that happens between marketplace, church, and nonprofit leaders to solve city issues. And we want to play a part in bringing them together and saying to marketplace leaders specifically, we don't want you to just fund solutions from churches and nonprofits. We want you to help find them and work towards them together. So everything we do at Denver Institute is grounded in one of those 5 problems that we want to work on for the next 5 years. And if you know Denver Institute really well, you know that from the very beginning, we also had 5 guiding principles that have guided our work for the life of the organization. I won't share them all with you now, but just know we've built a lot of structure around where we want to go, not because we want to be restrictive, but because we want that to birth freedom and energy and momentum around the ways that we're going to address those problems. So today you're going to be hearing from 3 other of my coworkers: Joanna Meyer, who's our founder and executive director of Women Work and Calling; Abby Worland, who serves as our VP of Operations and Finance; and Grace Bryan, who is our Marketing and Communications Associate. So they all have a unique vantage point on the FOR campaign and what it's been like to work on it from their seats, and I'm really excited for you to hear from them. Abby, Grace, and Joanna, thanks for joining the Faith and Work podcast. We're so glad to have you.
Thanks, Ross.
Great to be here.
Yeah. Yes, it's so fun to have you all on and to talk about the FOR campaign a little bit. Joanna's like always on the podcast, but Abby and Grace, you're always doing behind the scenes work. So I'm thrilled that you're willing to share some thoughts with us today, kind of inside the FOR campaign for the first 2 years. So let me just jump into the first question is just, what has the FOR campaign felt like to you guys working on the team at Denver Institute? And I'm going to start with Joanna because she's been around the Denver Institute team the longest. What are you, 11 years in now, Joe? So let's like,
yeah, it might even be 12 at this point, because I was like a contractor for a little while, like just hustling and hoping money would come in to establish the institute and I could get a job.
And we're still here. This is great. It's so exciting.
Isn't that crazy?
So tell us, what's the FOR campaign felt like to you?
Yeah, I think the FOR campaign came in probably about like 8 years into the life of Denver Institute, 9. And up until that point, we had a really good foundation. Jeff Haynen, our founder, is just such an incredible thinker. And I think about as God was moving in his own life, deepening his spiritual formation, we began to see some beautiful elements of spiritual formation be woven into what we do at Denver Institute. But the FOR campaign has allowed us to press into the practical work that we're doing in even more tangible ways and identify the needs of our cities. And so I've seen both stronger collaboration happening through Denver Institute, really practical outpouring into the daily work of our people. And that's a new and next step. I think we'll see ripples of that shaping our friends in the Faith and Work movement as they shape us in other ways because of the FOR campaign.
That's awesome. All right, Grace, you've been working the shortest amount of time at Denver Institute. So you've only known working at Denver Institute with the FOR campaign. How has that helped shape your work and the role that you're playing?
Yeah, I've never known a Denver Institute without the FOR campaign, which is very different than Joanna's perspective. I think coming on the team, it was really clarifying of like, what are we actually trying to do? And there's never been a question there in my mind. Like, it's felt like our team is able to come back to the FOR campaign and kind of rally around it. And I think we're trying to do so many things that we're excited about. And there's so many areas of our work. And it's really helpful to like have that as kind of a grounding place of like, which things tie back to the FOR campaign? What do we really want to put our energy and efforts towards? And so I feel like it has really helped focus our work and help us kind of work better as a team and make sure we're kind of all going in the same direction. So it's really helped me in my day-to-day work to be like, kind of what am I working towards and what's most important?
Yeah, absolutely. An important part of work is to know where we're going and how it all fits together. And yeah, I think that's been one of the things I've liked about the FOR campaign the most, is it has given us some guardrails and some lanes where we say this is why we're doing these things, and this is what we hope changes because of those things. Abby, I'd love for you to share, before you share what has been challenging about the FOR campaign, would you share like a couple wins that from your perspective in the ops and finance seat and communications? You know, what would you think of as these were encouragements and wins over the first couple of years?
Yeah, well, I actually want to share something that's been a personal win for me in the FOR campaign before I talk about some of the programmatic things. I think for me, working on and through the FOR campaign has really enlarged my view of my understanding of God's view of work. I think when I came to Denver Institute, I felt very strongly that work was a primary place of spiritual formation. Work is where we are formed in Christ's likeness. And that was kind of where my theology of work stopped. And I think the FOR campaign has really helped me expand that vision to think that not only is work a place of spiritual formation, it's also one of the primary places where God does his work in the world, and to think about that. And so I think I've been really grateful for the For campaign personally and spiritually, because it's expanded my own view and own theology of work. So that would be one win or success
That's a
for
good
me
one.
personally. Yeah. Programmatically, I've got lots of things that I could say, but I think the one that consistently comes up for me is the energy and the momentum that I am sensing around convening, and this idea of people connecting with each other and coming together. Or on the team, we like to say that, like, when you get good people in a room together, good things happen. And really, yes, we want to put on a great event. We want to provide excellent content, but really I've seen a primary win of the campaign being just bringing people, faithful Christians, together and seeing the fruit that comes out of that. Oftentimes we have nothing to do with what happens after those events. People meet, sit next to somebody and hatch a plan. Somebody else gets a job from somebody they met at Denver Institute event. I've just been really encouraged by the energy around people coming together and connecting with one another and building relationships with one another. And I think that has been a primary win across all of our different program areas. That's been a primary win for me in the campaign.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. And before you share more, Abby, I'd love Joanna to answer that question too. Joanna, you're leading this really significant initiative at Denver Institute. We're investing a lot, and it has been a little different over the last couple of years. Women work and calling. Maybe some of that's For campaign related, maybe some of it's not, but you've done an amazing job kind of how those things fit together and how they grow together and move each other forward has been really significant. Yeah. So love for you to talk about like what's been exciting for you in that. Where have you seen some wins and some growth?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. So probably about 3 years ago, we began to see a significant uptick in momentum around women work and calling. We realized that as we started to live stream the event during the pandemic, we were getting a national audience watching along, and we wanted to do more than just have watchers. We wanted to think about what it would look like to convene, cultivate, and catalyze individual women in their work, but how women work and calling could be a tool to address the discipleship gap that exists for Christian women, which is vocational discipleship, speaking to the fullness of a calling, and especially as our daily work fits into that. And so we began to cultivate a secondary audience in that conversation. We realized that that discipleship gap could be most effectively filled if we came alongside the organizations and institutions that play a formative role in Christian women's working lives. And so we said, okay, what does it look like to build partnerships and training and resources that could serve places like churches or Christian colleges and universities, faith-based nonprofits, faith-friendly business, or even just independent women that are wanting to start women in work. And so we've developed an entire comprehensive strategy around vocational discipleship for individual women and also organizational development to make vocational discipleship the norm in those types of things. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to think of a day where work and leadership in public life were just normal parts of a person's experience at a local church? That's a rarity for women. So that's been really fun, but it's also been really messy. And the For campaign has helped bring clarity in that mess, because we intentionally mapped our problems that we're solving in our discipleship strategy right in with the For campaign. So Women Work and Calling is Denver Institute, and it's also not Denver Institute because it's playing out in the world. It's playing in Holland, Michigan. It's playing in Canada, where we have a woman applying to participate in our Ministry Leaders Intensive. It's happening in London, where I met a woman this summer who's doing women in work programming and wants to be involved with our network. And so we're thinking about how do we honor those amazing problems that we're trying to solve through the For campaign and the DNA and the vision that we have at Denver Institute, and then also figure out how do you create an environment where you are having this distributed ministry model. And so it's amazing. I mean, like this year at the annual event, we had more than 1,300 women involved. That's a long way from the days when I was planning the event with some interns and a couple of volunteers in a church gym here in the Denver area. And so that's just fun. And I don't think that would have been possible without the For campaign. So there's a lot of gratitude and excitement for how that brought structure to what we do.
Yeah, I think of that baseline problem that we're trying to solve is that Christians will perpetuate an anemic or a lifeless vision for work without access to excellent vocational discipleship resources. A little bit of a mouthful, But basically what that says, if we don't do different things, we'll continue perpetuating the same problem. And, I just think it's been really cool to see different ways the team has leaned into the places of leadership that they have, whether it's when Work and Calling or the fellowship or this podcast, where we said, all right, how did those things address that core issue? And so it's been fun, knowing there's an audience here in Colorado and beyond that are engaging with those pieces, including when Work and Calling and others. And, I'm excited about that. That's where I get a lot of energy. It's like, I am convinced people still need the good news about work that God has laid out in Scripture very clearly. And these give us an opportunity to do that. Well, I also know it's been challenging for the team as well to try to work on the 4 campaign. And I love to hear a little bit of what do those challenges look like? And we can start with Abby, who's our VP of Ops and Finance. What's been your view of the 4 campaign, and what's been hard?
Yeah. Anytime, I think I have some thoughts about our team internally and some of the things externally that's been a challenge. I think anytime you make an organizational shift, regardless of what industry you're in, anytime you have some sort of new campaign, new mission, new vision, that trickles down into the way the team works, what the team is doing. And so I think a challenge that we faced is to think about how to prioritize our work. Where does our energy go? How do we work together effectively as a team? A lot of change management in that way, a lot of collaboration among our team, trying to figure out how do we use our resources, our time, our people effectively towards this campaign, this new mission, this new vision. And so I think we're in a pretty good place right now. But I know back when we first launched, that was a real challenge, is thinking about okay, this new campaign is great, but what does that actually mean for our day-to-day work on the team? So for all of you operations people listening out there, I am with you. And anytime the organization makes a shift, that operationally makes a lot of changes for everybody. I think something else that we're finding challenging is, I think we're pretty good at convening people, like I said before, bringing people together and helping them learn more about God's vision for work. But where we're really challenged right now is thinking about how to take that head and heart knowledge and move it outwards into practical application in their workplace. That idea of, we use the phrase catalyzing redemptive action. How do you take this vision for work and move it into your workplace? That is hard. It's hard to make a change in your work habits, in the way you think about your work, in the way you do your work. And I know we're going to be working on that next year and the year after that and the year after that, this idea of how do we become good catalyzers of action. But that has been much more challenging than I think we anticipated at the launch of the 4 campaign, is how to help people actually do things differently in their daily work.
Thanks for listening. My name is Marcy McGovern, and I'm delighted to serve on the board of directors for Denver Institute. As a financial advisor, I have experienced and want others to experience the paradigm shift that happens when we see our everyday work as pleasing to God and as a way to love our neighbors. Programming like the Faith and Work podcast catalyzes this change, and we are just getting started. As Denver Institute pursues its mission to prepare people to serve God and others through their daily work, we look forward to seeing our workplaces and cities transformed. But that cannot happen without the support of our listeners. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard on the Faith and Work podcast, or if your life has been shaped by a Denver Institute event, the fellowship, a cohort, or our many publications, I encourage you to financially support this mission. Whether you join me as a monthly partner or give a one-time gift, your support helps workers, workplaces, and communities experience the hope and the life that Christ provides. Visit the Give page at denverinstitute.org. That's denverinstitute.org.
Great point. Yes. It's, not everybody wants to be catalyzed. I know I don't
No,
always want to be catalyzed around my house on the things I should be doing better. Um,
totally.
I somehow get made aware of those things either through my kids or Candace. And then I'm like, do I want to change that really? Or,
Yeah. The
hmm,
status quo can be really comfortable, and I feel that, and I don't like being catalyzed.
yeah. And, one of the challenges I think we're all faced with in our everyday work is to, it's easier to compartmentalize. Oh, God doesn't care about this as much as he cares about my church volunteering, my nonprofit giving. Those are the things that really count or that he's more concerned with. But of course, if he's Lord of your whole life, he cares about your whole life. And so
Mhm.
he wants that. He wants you to look at your work and go, hey, where can you be more aligned with who I am and what I'm doing in the world through your everyday tasks?
Yeah.
Hey, Grace, talk to us. What do you think's been challenging? You've been doing a lot of work on communications. Is this an easy thing to communicate to people, or do you find it to be very simple?
I don't think simple's the right word for it. It's a fun kind of challenge or like puzzle of like all these different things that I'm working on communicating and promoting, and our events and podcasts and resources we're creating, and they all kind of fit together into the ideas kind of woven into the For campaign. But and I think another word we use a lot around Denver Institute is galvanize. We're like galvanizing people towards a lot of things. And sometimes we're just like tired of galvanizing. Like it's just,
Mhm.
that's the name of the game often. But I think there's so many things that our team is excited about and individuals are excited about, and people's specific lanes that they're running in. But there's a lot of like bringing other people in with us. And I think I would say every team member is really passionate about the work that we're doing and excited about it and wanting to bring, as many people into it as we can. And then sometimes you kind of get to a point where you're like, this is tiring. Like it's hard to, communicate this and work towards kind of other people wanting to join into this vision that we have. So I think kind of where I think it's hard is like, how do we, continue to promote and communicate about the For campaign in fresh ways and compelling ways? And yeah, how do we keep bringing more people into it? I think that's what feels challenging to me.
Can I offer a little word of praise for Grace? If I was going to nominate someone for the most impactful employee award this year, I think it would be Grace. And so when you talk about galvanizing, I'll just affirm, I bet it is really fatiguing because you have to be the mouthpiece of Denver Institute and all of our various initiatives with the goal of inviting people in or catalyzing them for action. And that is tiring, but you've done it so beautifully. I mean, I loved for this year's annual event for Women Working Calling, I was seeing people on LinkedIn responding and sharing and talking about the event in a way that they never had before. And part of that comes from Grace's creativity and skill in helping us be present online. So although it's tiring, your galvanizing is really good.
Absolutely
You're doing
true.
an
Yeah.
awesome job, Grace. Absolutely. We're so glad you're on the team. All right, Joanna, I got a more meta question for you, which is, what has the For campaign maybe exposed as a broader challenge than maybe we had anticipated in trying to execute the way that we wanted to?
Yeah, I think we have a very entrepreneurial team that is proactive. And so one of the joys of working with Ross is that you opened a lot of doors early on in your leadership here, but it kind of felt like all of us that had some entrepreneurial energy and vision just all started running hard because we had freedom to pursue some new opportunities. And so figuring out how do we gauge the effectiveness of the programming that we're doing, what's working and what's not, what do we say yes to and what do we say no to? I think the no is very hard because we just want to keep saying yes to things. And also, how do we work in an aligned way? I know, as I've been planning Women Working Calling, always at the back of my head is the question of, am I being authentic and reflecting the core values of what Denver Institute is? And for me, how do we simplify it so we can have a lay person who isn't trained in faith and work or not a theologian actually be able to teach and replicate some of the things that make Denver Institute what it is? And so it's been a total joy to see it playing locally in the mouths of other people, contextualized to where they are. But that's a challenge to figure out, how do we make this usable, not just learnable, come to us and learn, but how do you live it out in the field and in your work?
That's a great insight. And yeah, a lot of entrepreneurial energy around here and a lot of freedom to try some stuff. And I think 2 years in, you kind of go, okay, what's working? And where do we want to really focus in on the last few years? I would say some challenges have been, we have some big goals around how we want to work with churches. We have some big goals with how we want to engage in some city issues. And we have a lot of room to grow in how we continue to do that. And that's definitely something that we're going to be working on. I would say another kind of just broader challenge that I've noticed is I think it's a little more popular to talk about faith and work than it was 10 years ago, let's say. And I think that's a great thing to be celebrated. That's awesome news, actually. I think the challenge comes when maybe we don't take it as deep as we could as a collective group of people following Jesus. And I think that gives us opportunity at Denver Institute through the 4 campaign to kind of continue to help people grow in their theological understanding, but also their imagination about what it actually looks like in their everyday work, which is one of the reasons we did on this podcast, this series all year long called Voices from the Workplace. You're hearing 3 voices from the workplace right now, in fact. Probably you're listening in going, oh, yeah, we struggle with saying no. And, when we made a change, it was really hard to figure that out operationally. And so just giving people a chance to say, this is what it actually can look like. And we'll be continuing that series in 2026. So lots of challenges, lots of good things have happened. I'd love for the 3 of you to share just a minute, what are you looking forward to? There are 3 more years left in the 4 campaign, 2026, 2027, 2028. As you think about your areas of responsibility, where are you most excited? What are you hopeful about? What would you hope would be true at the end of 2028? Abby, do you want to kick us off?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me to start. I would say I have many things that I'm hopeful for, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth of women working calling, and that addition, there's just a lot of momentum there, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm also really excited to relaunch the 5280 fellowship that's going to start in January of 2026, the new class. It's a 5-month vocational discipleship and professional development program in the Denver area, and I was a part of it 5 years ago, and I'm excited that that's relaunching. And I'm excited just to see how our team internally grows, adapts, and changes, and just grows professionally and spiritually through the campaign. I just think about the 8 people that are on the team right now and future teammates, and just thinking about I'm excited to see how this campaign impacts us as Christians and as workers. So those would be the 3 things out of all the many things I could be excited about. Those are the 3 that come to mind right away.
That's awesome. I'm excited about those too. Okay, Grace, how about you? What are you excited about? And then we'll let Joanna close us out.
Yeah, I think like Abby, there's lots of things I could say, but I think I really appreciate the kind of excitement and attention the team has towards younger workers being involved in kind of the mission of Denver Institute. And I think usually we see people who are kind of more in their mid to later career. But I think there's been more younger people coming to events and around Denver Institute. And I think of my own peer circles, kind of most of my peers are in their first few years of work and in kind of entry-level jobs and doing things that are honestly not very fun and often not very kind of meaningful on face value. And so I just hear in my day-to-day world a lot people who are not excited about their work and who don't find meaning in it and are just waiting for the weekend, waiting for 5 p.m. So I think I'm always just really excited and encouraged when there's new faces at events, when I get to talk to someone at an event and they're like, oh, I saw something on social media and I wanted to come, and I've never heard of something like this before. So I think, which also connects to my work, which is fun to be like, oh, it's working. There's people out there hearing about us.
You're galvanizing, Grace.
Galvanizing on the internet. But yeah, I think I'm just excited about, younger people and new people getting to hear about Denver Institute for the first time and hearing kind of the message that their work can bring hope and life to their city and people around them. And I think that there's a lot of people who that would be really, really changing to hear that.
That's great. All right, Joanna, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm excited to see the fellowship go this spring. It's going to be really fun. I mean, just to reboot it and see what might be possible. One of my favorite expressions that has helped me when I work on long-term projects is the idea that you'll accomplish less in 1 year than you hoped and way more in 3 years than you could have imagined. And I think we're at the cusp of that in Denver Institute of like 3 years into the FOR campaign. Long, steady, intentional effort is starting to bear fruit in new ways. And so I'm excited across our program areas to see what that looks like. Personally, you know, one of the things that keeps me going is this vision of changing how Christian women are developed, that every Christian woman would have a greater understanding of God's big invitation to follow him and the tools to know how to leverage their influence so that when they are working faithfully, the world will taste the hope and life that only Jesus can provide. And so that's some of the vision mission of Denver Institute. But wouldn't it be amazing if every woman was invited into conversations like that in her journey with Christ? And that's not happening. And so, you know, I think about like a practical example. I think of my friend, Jackie Gustafson, that's at a Presbyterian church in Lincoln, Nebraska, who has been steadily doing faith and women and work stuff out there. And she said the other day by email, she goes, you know, this would not have continued. Like I would not be growing personally. I wouldn't have had the wisdom to know how to do this had I not been woven into the women work and calling community. And so I just think like, what could we do if we resourced and catalyzed people all over the country? Like how would the creativity and energy and imagination of Denver Institute play out with a uniquely Lincoln flair?
That's right. I like that. That's great. Well, one other thing I wanted to share that we're excited about, that the team wants to share, and we just announced recently, was we received a grant to do some storytelling work. And we're very excited about this. It's a 5-year grant, and it's not only for Denver Institute to do storytelling better, which means finding stories of people who are doing a job and they have figured out a way to do it faithfully that has shown up in really cool ways. And we want to grow the imagination of the church at work through those stories. So it's going to help Denver Institute and organizations like ours across the country have the capacity and resources to tell those stories. And we think that's a huge way to close the imagination gap between thinking rightly about work and actually showing up on Monday and knowing what that looks like and what that means. So we're pumped. You'll be hearing more about that. It's a very exciting time. Thanks for listening in on our inside look on the FOR campaign. Joanna, Abby, and Grace, thanks for jumping on, giving us some of your time and sharing your perspective so we could learn a little bit more about your everyday work and your vantage point on the FOR campaign.
Of course. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for joining us on this inside look into the heartbeat of Denver Institute for Faith and Work, which is the FOR campaign. It is guiding all the things that we do, all the ways that you connect with us, whether it's resources online, the events that we do here in Colorado or around the country through Women Work and Calling, or the podcasts. If you haven't listened to Teach Us to Pray, you should check that one out as well. It's an incredible podcast. And so what are the ways you can engage in the FOR campaign if you're wondering? Well, first, we love your prayers. We love prayers for wisdom, for courage, for how we actually continue to work on this. But mostly, we love for you to pray for your own imagination about work, because the main way that you participate in the FOR campaign is how you are showing up at work. Are you recognizing the ways that God is working inside you to make you more like him? And then also, are you recognizing the opportunities putting in front of you to join with the work he's doing in the world? And so we'd love for you to do that. And then we always invite you to share this episode and others so that we can increase the imagination capacity of the church at work. And lastly, I just want to mention at the very end, I said we had gotten a grant to do storytelling for 5 years. It's a significant grant, and we're going to be hiring 3 people. So first, we're hiring a director of storytelling and a production manager to help with the storytelling work. And we're also going to be looking for a director of development or similar title. So if you are interested, or if you think you know some people who might be interested, you can simply go to our website, denverinstitute.org/employment, to learn more about that. And if you want to learn more about the FOR campaign, you can go to denverinstitute.org/FOR-campaign and learn about it there. As always, thanks for listening.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Faith and Work Podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. The Faith and Work Podcast is produced by Denver Institute. We believe that when Christians work faithfully, the world will taste the hope and life that Jesus provides. To learn more or to make a financial contribution, visit denverinstitute.org.